Good evening. At this time, I will call to order the Wednesday, October 19, 2022 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Chester? Mr. Cho? Ms. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Roosh? Ms. Euchman? Mr. Warmbrun?
Here.
And Mr. Welch?
Here, we do have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
All right, at this time, I would ask for approval of the minutes from the September 21st, 2022 meeting.
No.
You gotta turn it on.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
It's been moved. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
It's now been seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Those minutes are approved. At this time, I would ask anyone who might want to be heard tonight to stand and be sworn. This does not obligate you to speak, but unless you are sworn, you cannot speak. So anyone who thinks they may want to speak tonight, stand and be sworn, please. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give tonight will be true and accurate to the best of your belief? Thank you. Are there any communications?
We did receive communications, which we had some that came in after the agenda went out, so we just put all those together in one packet for you. They were all regarding the case that will be heard tonight. Just to quickly summarize, there was one communication in favor and 9 communications in opposition to the case.
All right, thank you. Are there any continued public hearings?
There are none.
All right, at this time, I would call for hearing ZBA 2022 C-02, a request by Aaron and Madison Butler for a conditional use permit to allow an owner-occupied bed and breakfast at 611 West Iowa Street in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District. Do we have a staff report?
Yes. All right. This is a request by Aaron and Madison Butler for a conditional use permit to allow an owner-occupied bed and breakfast at 611 West Iowa Street. Staff finds that the case meets the 3 conditional use permit criteria and therefore recommends that the Zoning Board of Appeals approve the request with 3 conditions. 4 letters of public input were included in the packet, and 5 additional letters were received after the packet was sent out. Those were sent to you all earlier today, and there are copies on the back table as well. This is a location map of the property. It's located on the south side of Iowa Street, east of Lincoln Avenue. The applicants purchased the property earlier this year. They would like to rent the first floor on a short-term basis and live in the basement of the house while it is being rented. This is a zoning map of the property. It is zoned R2, single and 2-family residential. Nearby are other single and 2-family residences, apartment buildings, Greek houses, rooming houses, and Carl Park to the east. The adjacent properties are all zoned R2. These are a few exterior site photos of the house. The applicants request a conditional use permit to allow them to operate an owner-occupied bed and breakfast in their home. The conditional use permit procedures are met to ensure that the proposed use is consistent with the R2 zoning district. They are updating the interior of the house with new flooring, light fixtures, countertops, appliances, and bathroom fixtures. They will also install a privacy fence in the backyard. An initial building inspection was conducted before the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the home would be subject to a second building inspection to ensure that the home meets all code requirements. The property would not be rented for long-term occupancy and would generally continue to function as a single-family home. I will point out that there is a shared driveway on the property. It is entirely on the applicant's property, but the property immediately west uses this for access to their lot. Here's an aerial of the property. According to the applicants, the bed and breakfast will be available for both weekday and weekend reservations with a 2-night stay minimum. Security cameras and smart locks will be installed on the property for the safety of neighbors, guests, and applicants. Guests will stay on the main level of the house with up to 4 guest beds available, and 2 parking spaces will be available on site. I will point out that that is not in the access drive. They will have to be parked off of the access drive so that the neighboring property still has access to their parking. The applicants also plan to impose restrictions of their own, such as not allowing guests to bring pets, host parties, or smoke on the property. Quiet hours will also be enforced from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Staff recommends applying 3 conditions to the conditional use permit if granted. The first being, while the property is being rented, the owner must be present. The conditional use permit shall expire upon the transfer of property or after 6 verifiable nuisance complaints within a 1-year period related to the rental of the property. And the third being that the property will be subject to regular city inspection. The Zoning Board of Appeals may also impose such additional conditions and requirements on the operation of the proposed use as are appropriate for or necessary for the public health, safety, welfare, and to carry out the purposes of the zoning ordinance. Those were included in your packet. Staff finds that the request meets the 3 conditional use permit criteria. The use is conducive to the public convenience at that location as the house is located close to the University of Illinois and amenities including restaurants, walking paths, Carl Park, and public transportation. The property is accessible via Lincoln Avenue to the west and Florida Avenue to the south. The proposed use will be designed to operate so that it will not be unreasonably injurious to the district in which it shall be located. The proposed use would not be a detriment to the R2 zoning district because the proposed bed and breakfast is designated and located and proposed to be operated in an inconspicuous manner within the existing residential neighborhood. The applicants have updated the property with new siding, flooring, landscaping, and appliances, and would install security measures such as outdoor security cameras and smart locks for the safety of the guests, the neighbors, and the applicants. Conditions would be applied to the conditional use permit, and restrictions would be imposed by the applicants to ensure that the bed and breakfast is not a detriment to the surrounding area. The proposed use conforms to the standards of and preserves the essential character of the district in which it will be located. The proposed use is consistent with the applicable regulations and standards of the R2 zoning district, as the applicant would accommodate occasional guests, but the property would generally continue to function as a single-family home, and the applied conditions of the permit would ensure that the use would conform to and preserve the essential character of the neighborhood. Couple more photos. This shows the shared access drive a little bit better, the 2-car garage on site, and then there is one, I guess you could call it a parallel parking spot that runs along the house. This is from the rear of the property looking north. And our recommendation, sorry,
Put that back.
this one? Sure. Okay. The Zoning Board of Appeals has the following options on the requested conditional use permit. Approve the conditional use permit as requested, approve the conditional use permit with certain terms and conditions, or deny the conditional use permit. If the Zoning Board of Appeals elects to do so, it should articulate findings supporting its denial. Staff recommends that the Zoning Board of Appeals approve the conditional use permit with 3 conditions, and I'll put those up on the screen just for clarity's sake. That the owner will be present while the property is being rented. The conditional use permit shall expire upon transfer of property or after 6 verifiable nuisance complaints within a 12-month period related to the rental of the unit, and the property will be subject to regular city inspection. The applicants are here to make a presentation and answer any questions, and I can take any questions for staff.
Thank you, Kat. Are there any questions for staff? You go ahead.
The six verifiable nuisance complaints, is that written in the law somewhere? Is that an arbitrary number?
I would say it's somewhat of an arbitrary number. Staff came up with that based on the fact that that would be one nuisance complaint every 2 months. We felt that if we were receiving nuisance complaints every 2 months, that that was probably enough to warrant the revoking of the conditional use permit.
And that would be like loud music or,
Yeah, it could be any number of things. I think noise is most associated with nuisance complaints. If there were, significant parking issues, I think that's something we could revisit. Yeah.
and then do we have any idea how many owner-operated bed and breakfasts are in this neighborhood that are registered with the city?
That are registered with the city. There was one that was issued on Michigan Avenue. I want to say that was back around 2016. Since the 1990s, I think we've issued 4 conditional use permits, although there have been a few that have not been approved. So 4 have been issued for owner-occupied bed and breakfast.
Thank you.
I think the one in Michigan isn't one anymore. I think the one in Michigan isn't one anymore.
It's highly likely that that's the case.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't see where the parking places are.
Sure. Let's go back here. So there's 2 spaces in that garage, and then that one right here is off of the access drive, but a car could still pull up and then back into that spot without blocking off the neighbor's garage or the applicant's garage. I'll let the applicants get into the parking situation a little bit deeper, but as they included in their application and as we've discussed with them, 2 spaces must be available on site. So that would not be on-street parking. And we felt that was a sufficient number for the number of people that they plan to accommodate.
Okay, so, and how many rooms were they going to rent?
So we did a building inspection last week, or earlier this week. No, it had to have been last week. There are 3 bedrooms upstairs, and there is 1 potential bedroom downstairs, with some relative separation between where the applicants would be staying and where guests could potentially stay. Does that answer your question?
And do the basement bedrooms have escape windows?
They will be required to install egress windows.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions for staff? No? Go ahead, Matt.
So if this is gonna be owner occupied, you said there was separation, so is it a duplex then?
That's a great question. In the way that it's configured, there would be 2 separate living areas. However, in the R2 zoning district, you would need a conditional use permit to have a duplex. So the applicants are applying for a conditional use permit to allow the owner-occupied bed and breakfast, not the long-term rental of 2 separate living units. It would not be considered a duplex with those 2 separate living units without a conditional use permit. But if they wanted to rent it for a for longer than 30-day periods, then they would need to get a conditional use permit to allow that rental, and they would also need to register with the rental registration program.
I guess maybe to clarify, was it a single family home and now it's becoming a duplex?
Previously, I believe, and I'll let the applicants get a little bit deeper into this as well, there was a mother who was living on the 1st floor and her son was living in the basement in this area that the applicants are proposing to stay in while they have guests. They're still in the process of renovating, so I can't point to something and say, oh, that's a kitchen, you know what I'm saying?
So did you say there were 3 bedrooms on the 1st floor?
Correct.
And 1 in the basement that could be rented?
There is the potential for there to be 1 bedroom in the basement. It would need to have an egress window installed for it to be a rentable bedroom.
And what about the other bedroom down there?
downstairs.
Yeah.
And once again, I'll let the applicants get a little bit deeper into this as well. There's a stairwell that goes from ground level down to where the bedroom is. I believe that is considered a,
Oh, it's in the bedroom?
yes.
Okay. So what about the fact if there's 4 unrelated people?
I'll let Kevin weigh in there.
Yeah, that wouldn't be relevant here because it would be a bed and breakfast, and it's not. I mean, that has to do with dwelling units. That's how many people can occupy a dwelling unit, and this is a different animal since it's a bed and breakfast.
Oh, the other thing I was saying, I just think that having a single-lane driveway, when you have a house next door and this house, is just a problem. It was with the one on Michigan, and I just think it's a bad idea.
Are there any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
The applicants or any representative for the applicants wish to be heard?
You guys can come up here.
Come forward. You have to sign in. Those two were here. Oh, all right. I've been informed you did not get sworn.
I can go sit back down.
You can sit there, but you can't speak
Okay.
unless you,
I'm not planning on
All right.
speaking. You said applicants come up.
Okay, so
proceed.
hi everyone. I would just like to thank you for being here while we share the plans for our home at 611 West Iowa Street. My name is Madison Butler. Myself and my husband Aaron have applied for a permit to operate an owner-occupied bed and breakfast at our residence. I hope that by the time our time ends here today, we'll all understand the intentions for our home, and I sincerely hope we can put any and all concerns to rest. Let's first start with some visual plans for our home. As I'm sure you know, we're knee-deep in renovations right now. I wish the photo on the screen was an after picture, but we're still working on it. We are working on this home not only to live in ourselves, but to improve the property values and overall quality of Iowa Street as a whole. That being said, I would like to share with you the future of 611 West Iowa Street. So for the exterior, we have our shake style siding that will give our home a quaint and peaceful cottage feel. We'll also be restoring the overgrown landscaping with the addition of beautiful stone retention walls coming in spring 2023. As for inside the house, as a creative designer and interior decorator, I have a lot up my sleeve for this project. Imagine a home filled with rich colors, textures, high quality finishes, and a place that immediately makes its guests feel at home. As for the living areas of our home, these will be designed to put our guests at ease. Creating cozy and relaxing environments through design is something that I take a lot of pride in. Warm and inviting bedrooms at our bed and breakfast will be a place for rest and rejuvenation for our guests. And now that we have a good visual in place for our home, let's talk about all the things that encompass our home. What our home is or will be is curated, intentional, personalized, welcoming, and luxurious. Now we can talk about what our home is not. Our home is not student housing, although such accommodations exist already on Iowa Street. As I hope you can tell from our design photos, our home is not a place to be overrun by college students. We simply would not allow it. Our home is not cheap. We are using high quality materials in our home that are built to last for the generations to come. Our home is not unattended. We are designing an owner's suite in the basement for us to reside in when we are hosting guests in the upstairs of our home. In a worst-case scenario that something may go wrong, it would be happening directly above us. We would be able to intervene at a moment's notice. Our neighbors would never have to worry. Our home is not disruptive. Our home is not a party house. It is a sanctuary. You have seen the plans for our home. It will be high-end, luxurious, and well-kept. Plain and simple, there will be absolutely no parties allowed. So at this point, you may be thinking, this seems like a lot of work, so why have a bed and breakfast? The answers are simple. To welcome guests from near and far. We believe that out-of-state residents will enjoy our property just as much as in-state residents would. How amazing would it be for our neighbors to be able to welcome their family members and have a place to stay just a block away? It is no secret that people travel from different states, if not different countries, to visit the city of Urbana. We want everyone to feel welcome. Why else? To welcome guests who are unfit for hotel accommodation. I believe that all of us can think of someone who we know who is unable to stay in a hotel for health reasons, whether it be mobility limitations or dietary restrictions. In Urbana, we want everyone to feel welcomed. Hotels should not be the only choice. Using myself as an example, I have celiac disease. This means I'm not able to easily eat at restaurants at the risk of becoming very ill, and I need a kitchen to prepare my own food. When traveling, a hotel room just isn't going to cut it. Outside of my personal case, there are so many others who require special accommodation. How would it feel to know you can't visit a town because they can't accommodate your needs? This is why small bed and breakfasts are so important. We believe Urbana's visitors should have choices other than hotel rooms when it comes to overnight stays. Why else? To provide guests with a unique and unforgettable experience. The city of Urbana is like no other. It is no secret that the need for diversity and inclusivity run through our veins in this town. We see no harm in opening our doors to respectful guests with safe and accredited backgrounds. And finally, to follow our passion. We take so much pride in what we do, and we love doing it. Aaron and I collectively spend hundreds of hours crafting our properties to be some of the most wonderful places to stay. We enjoy meeting guests of all backgrounds. At our other short-term rental properties, we have hosted traveling doctors and nurses, journalists, families visiting for holidays, family reunions, even a family displaced due to a house fire. Notice how college kids and partiers aren't on our list of short-term renters? So you may ask, how do we know who we are renting to? This is because hosting platforms exist. These are by far the absolute safest ways to share a home. By using a hosting platform, all guests are screened by background checks. They have their identities verified. Guests are reviewed by hosts, and any guest below a 3.5-star rating is no longer allowed to book on the platforms. Anytime we receive a booking inquiry, we are able to see who this person is, the reason for their visit, and honest ratings from other hosts. You can't get that at a hotel. Not every booking inquiry we receive will be right for our home, and we accept that. We are patient and communicative with prospective guests. So far, even while managing a handful of our properties entirely remotely, we have never had a single issue or noise complaint. We rent to respectful guests and respectful guests only. This is not our first rodeo. I would also like to mention hosting platforms' zero tolerance policy for partying. For example, in 2020, the platform Airbnb banned all parties. Any guest who throws a party at a rental property will be suspended, if not entirely removed from the platform. For this reason, a vast majority of guests would never even consider taking that risk. But here's the thing, since we are living on site, it would never get to that point. Not only will we be living at the property, we will be able to monitor security camera footage, ensuring that no unpermitted guests are on the property and that all occupancy laws are being followed. Since we are doing the right thing by acquiring a permit, we can ensure you that we will do everything in our power to keep it. The goal of our bed and breakfast is for it to be as inconspicuous as possible. In fact, if we hadn't done the right thing by acquiring a permit, like many other people in the city of Urbana do, we are confident that our property would be so under the radar that no one would even notice we are sharing our home at all. So let's talk about the history of short-term rentals in Urbana. According to Kat's statement earlier, there have been 4 special use bed and breakfast permits granted in the last 32 years. That's a very small amount in a very long amount of time. However, from our search results, we discovered over 40 homes available for rent on Airbnb within the city limits of Urbana, a lot of which do not seem to be owner-occupied. This is happening all around us, whether we've realized it or not. I think that many of you would be surprised to know this includes a handful of properties right in our West Urbana neighborhood. So if Airbnb isn't new to Urbana, then what on earth is so conflicting about our case? It's that we are acquiring a permit to do so. We ask that you please do not punish us for doing the right thing and going through the city to legally operate an owner-occupied bed and breakfast. Trust us, this journey has not been easy, but we are here to follow all rules and conditions and do things the right way. So if you are against B&Bs, we ask that you would change your perspective to be for the regulation of B&Bs. Regulation keeps people safe. Think of all the B&Bs that have been running for years without any safety checks, any occupancy screenings, or any regulations of any kind. We are not the ones you need to worry about. We ask that you please give us a chance to operate within the conditions the city has put in place. This would be a great step forward for our community, businesses, visitors, and Urbana as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Where's the kitchen gonna be? Or are you gonna have 2 kitchens?
So we are creating an owner suite. There will be a kitchen upstairs and most likely a kitchenette in the owner suite in the basement.
And you mentioned you have other properties. Briefly, like, why are you moving here? Would you be here like as a 12-month resident in this property?
No, we're looking to be here for a very good amount of time.
But I mean, you're gonna be here the entire 12-month period. It isn't like you're gonna be hopping from here, say, back to Lincoln. I see where you were from Lincoln, or to some other property.
No,
to
I
do the
mean,
same thing?
we plan to have this as our permanent residence. However, I mean, everyone goes on vacations or has to leave at some point, but the condition that we're under is that our home will not be rented out when we're not there, and we would absolutely, although we remotely run other properties as it is, we would absolutely not be comfortable doing that here because we understand the conditions that have been put in place. That would not be an issue.
Would you and your renters be using the same entrance? Is there, I guess, are you gonna have an entrance just to your basement, or would you need to go through the house to get to your basement?
Yeah, so the house as itself, it has a stairwell that goes directly from the driveway right into the basement, and then from the driveway you can also enter the first floor of the home. So there are 2 established entrances already.
Okay, and then I heard something about a stairway. How does that fit into the whole layout? From upstairs to downstairs?
Yes, so like on the exterior of the home, there's an exterior stairwell that goes right down to an exterior door that leads into the basement, is what I was trying to say. But there are also interior stairs that lead down to the basement as well.
Okay. So you do have a way to go from the basement to the,
Oh, absolutely. So
first
this,
floor without going outside.
absolutely, this is a two-story home. So it's just like any house with a main floor and a basement. There's ways up and down.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard in favor of the application? In favor or against? In favor. In favor, all right, hold on. You come forward, whichever one of you wants to be first.
Thanks for both coming. We'll come one at a time. What is up there, sir?
Yes, please. And you need to sign in.
I have signed at the back, but I'll sign here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Russell Snyder, and my wife Priscilla, and we live at 701 West Iowa Street. Immediately across the driveway that is owned by the Butlers, I can't call them the Butlers, they're Maddie and Aaron. We've gotten to know them quite well. We've lived there for 47 plus years, and we've seen a lot of single-family residents. And I would dispel one myth and innuendo that seems to be cropping up frequently, and that is that this idea of a bed and breakfast next to us is bad, and it is exactly the opposite. We consider it a blessing for us to have these people, not just them, but what they're doing in favor of the property and increasing the values. We think it's a good idea, and we're very positive in favor of it. I've talked directly with immediate neighbors, talked to them about how I feel, how we feel, and how we support what the Butlers are doing. And except for two ladies who wandered by Monday, and I saw them looking in the windows, they didn't happen to be there that day, they were off somewhere else, and I talked to them, explained what the situation, no one in the neighborhood, anywhere, has asked what we think. Everyone assumes what we think, but they were always, in almost always instances, assuming incorrectly. We are in favor of it. And anybody that I've talked to about why it is that we feel it's beneficial. All of the improvements they are doing were tremendously in need for this property. It had deteriorated significantly over the past 47 years, and specifically in the last 10 years. An elderly lady, she passed away in her mid-90s, just about a month after she moved out of the property. It had not had any maintenance done, I would say, in at least 5 years, internally or externally. The building, I think if I had bought it, I probably would have torn it down, had the building raised. It was that bad. Externally, it was in horrible shape. The property, the grounds, the green, everything was bad. But what was really bad about this property for the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years were the individuals who were residing in the basement. I referred to them as the ne'er-do-well and the four wastrels. They came and went at all hours of the day and night, slammed the door to the basement constantly, had 4 extra cars parked on the street when they were there visiting, and they were there all the time. I don't know whether any of them worked. I don't know what they did, but we were plagued in the neighborhood, and my neighbors could attest to that. There were also instances where there were underage minors and girls going in and coming out very quickly from their property. I cannot tell you what was going on, but it didn't seem normal to me. And as my wife can tell you in her own words, there's more from the past. All of this at a single family residence. And for all the naysayers and all those who were closest and perhaps most vocal, I wonder where were they when all this was going on. It was obvious to my neighbors, but maybe not to others. So if people cared about the neighborhood, they never would have allowed this to happen. But in 47 years, the people who have complained the most have never once talked to us about this or about anything else. But I am in favor of this. I know them. I've worked with them since they've been here. I didn't happen to be here when they bought the house because I was out of place, but I see them daily. I see them working and spending a tremendous amount of time and effort. The worst I can say about this is I'm going to have to do more work on my place to make it look as good as they are in the neighborhood and as good as they're going to be for the neighborhood. And I think we all would be proud to have them as neighbors, and I consider them as my friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to be heard, ma'am? Yes, please. Please come forward.
I'm Priscilla Snyder, his other half, and I've lived there for 47 years also. We moved there as young grad students in 1975 and rented from Walter Draper, son of the original owner. Dr. Draper and his wife built the house they have, and Mrs. Draper's sister built the house we live in. So that's why they're kind of conjoined. We share the driveway partway, and we share what do we call it? Oh, arcade over the driveway between entrances. Okay. Walter proudly told us that the houses were Gunnison prefab homes, constructed in 1939. He noted that some neighbors were upset at that time because it was prefab moving into the neighborhood. The only thing the two houses shared were the driveway and the arcade. The house in question is larger than ours. We bought our side in 1981 from Walter Draper's estate. 611 then was purchased by a parent for his U of I student. She invited numerous other students to move in. We made many complaints about the number of people occupying a house. At one time, there was a total of 8, claiming they were all cousins, so she never got evicted. There were lots of cars, even a cool band. At that time, we couldn't allow our toddler son to play near this driveway. And we have a big, expansive concrete place at the back where both driveways go in. After 4 years of that, a nice couple moved in, remodeled the house for a couple of years. And then Lois Childer bought the place. She recently passed away at age 97. She allowed her young grandson to live in the basement, and he's the one that brought in the many young men and ladies that my husband was talking about. So when a new young couple bought the house this year, we were delighted. We had heard the place was in such bad shape that it should be torn down. We have never seen young people work as hard as these two. He's there till late at night, early in the morning. Maddie is there most of the time. He's had to remodel almost every inch, or fix every inch of that house, from the ceilings to the floors to the bathrooms, the tiling. I don't think there's anything original left. There probably isn't. I join the neighbors, whoever they are, I hope more, who support whatever they plan to do at the house they have painstakingly resurrected. By the way, more and more houses in our area are turning into student houses. There are several on our block alone, which weren't there years ago. I guess that's all I have to say. But I like what they're doing, and they're doing a great job of it. So I think it should be well supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in favor of the application? Hearing none. Is there anyone opposed to the application that wishes to be heard? If so, please come forward.
I
think-
did the first time, but I'm happy to do it again.
Do you swear that any testimony you give will be true and accurate to the best of your belief?
I do, thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to go on the record disputing and correcting the record about the previous occupant, Norma, who was 98 and lived with her grandson, as they mentioned, in the basement. As a parent of teenagers myself, we have a lot of people in and out of our house, young girls. There's a lot of teenage kids on that street. My son skateboards up and down that street all the time with the college kids in the student housing up the way, who he's made great friends with. I'm not opposed to that. Just because they preferred more than just boring grass doesn't mean their house was unkempt. It was full of personalities, such as so many things in Urbana. She had a sand that she had with blue there, and she had little animals in there and seashell. Sure, that's not everyone's taste, but so what? It's her lawn. Moving on. I feel like great that your mom bought you a house. You saw the neighborhood and you wanted to use it. The letter I got from the city particularly said on it, Airbnb. And now it's this delightful, beautiful house that I saw. That sounds great, but like, I don't care what the inside of your house looks like. Do you, are you gonna come to my house and see what, like, great, you're making this great thing. That's not, we can't evaluate things on the inside of our houses. I sent a letter to Kat October 18th at 10:27, and I didn't see it in the records, so I'm just going to read it. I said, hello, I write to strongly oppose the Airbnb proposed by Amy Butler and family. I cannot state it more articulately than the plea was who are here, so please consider this a second to their statement when they speak. The way this played out, play being the key word here, with the family telling Norma they wanted to retire there, then telling the city about some quaint bed and breakfast, but at the same time saying the quiet part out loud with the Airbnb. On the zoning request, I just feel like it's like you saw the neighborhood, you saw that wasn't accepted, so you didn't go around to the neighbors. That's great, they're great neighbors. I'm happy for Russ that he can have people that he enjoys right there. How that's relevant to an Airbnb, I fail to see the connection. So I feel like the city uses our neighborhood for photo ops and to woo faculty. But when the residents try to advocate for ourselves, whether that's the schools and wanting to keep Leal a walking school or something like this, the development staff is rarely on our side. I don't understand this. That I have kids. There's lots of kids on the street. It's really busy already. So just, again, adding more, even with their traffic, inside their space. Okay, sure, if you want that. I really feel like whether that, when Libby moved on, I thought we'd have a little bit more owner and neighbor presence, but I can't imagine this as the start of this Airbnb. And you're gonna, someone has celiac disease, but she said herself right now, well, we're not sure if we can put a kitchen down there. Well, and you have all these other properties and they never have parties because we're there, we can shut, but you're gonna be here. So congratulations on your empire of Airbnbs and rentals, that's great. But there was no socialization of this to the neighbors besides Russ, right? I saw what I think was someone's parent and I said, welcome to the neighborhood. No, really shady back and forth, clearly something going on. Then the signs come up. That's not how our neighborhood works. If you wanted to be part of the neighborhood, be part of the neighborhood. Talk to the folks.
Can I ask you to address your comments to us and
Sure.
not
I just didn't want to be rude, like talk to them, but you know
Well,
what I mean? That feels weird.
just
So,
to us, please?
so at any rate, this feels like a bait and switch. When you send me a piece of paper, Kat, and it says Airbnb, but now I see these beautiful pictures of a bed and breakfast, and we need a kitchen, and why can't people? You're not going to have a kitchen. This is just around the corner, and I like the person who wrote the letter. I didn't see it in there. They went back to Iowa City, and they said their neighborhood, their old college neighborhood, kind of neighborhood like this, was just filled with Airbnbs. I have that experience too. My 96-year-old aunt lives on Cape Cod in Dennis, Massachusetts, and every other house there has the flag with the Airbnb. It's just, it's just primo real estate, and people want to come for, in that case, the beach, and here for the games and the festivities and the fraternities and sororities, and I get it. But it feels really like you're using our neighborhood for your benefit. And I don't like how that feels, and I hope that you vote against it. But I also do support what Madison said exactly, and I think Russ talked about this too. As ugly as it may be, it's probably time to look at the whole Airbnb rules and how that works so that we aren't in this space again. And I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard in opposition? Come forward, please.
What do I need to do here? What do I need to do here? Just sit down and sign that? My name is Lee Melhado, and I live, okay, my name is Lee Melhado, and I live with my husband, Evan, who is also here tonight, directly behind this property. Our backyards abut. And I don't know that I want to characterize what I have to say as being for or against. We've lived in our location for 35 years, not as long as the 47, but a long time. And when I hear the other neighbors, the ones who share the driveway, describe the activity at the house, I feel like I live in a different world. I didn't see any of these things happening. I knew that an old lady lived there. I knew that she had a relative also living there who was a young man. We were never bothered by noise. We were never bothered by slamming doors. There was no more traffic in and out of that driveway than there is out of ours. I don't get the characterization. I will say that I was very pleased when I saw all the work that was being done. This house needed rehabilitation, and they are obviously well endowed financially and able and interested in rehabilitating the property. They took down a horrible old tree that plagued us and the power company for years. They're cleaning out the horribly overgrown backyard that was full of pokeweed and saplings. They're re-siding the house. They've re-insulated it. They seem to be using quality materials, and they're working very hard. And I admire all of that, and I'm glad to have that in my neighborhood. But I'm disturbed by the fact that this is an Airbnb. I'm disturbed by their description of how they're going to be living. It doesn't make sense. And there seems something secret and mysterious about all of this. I don't feel comfortable that I'm getting the whole story. When I went over and introduced myself, I felt that they were friendly. Actually, I haven't met Madison until tonight, but I tried to welcome them to the neighborhood. And just in the course of chatting, I asked, well, what do you do? And what does your wife do? And I never got a direct answer, and it was weird. It's like, well, we're going to be working from home. Well, what kind of work is it? Well, they wouldn't say. He wouldn't say. So I want to be welcoming, and especially if he does live there, I don't want to be poisoning the well here. I don't want a difficult relationship with him for the next 35 years if I live that long. But I don't get the plan. It doesn't make sense to me. Where are they going to be when the place isn't rented? How many Airbnbs do they have? How can they be more than one place if more than one is rented? And I'm sorry, but I feel uncomfortable and suspicious, and I'm worried about how this is all going to play out down the road. But I am very glad to have the building so nicely repaired.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Please come forward.
Members of the ZBA. I'm Michael Pleva. I'm at 708 West Iowa Street. My wife, Dr. Elizabeth Wagner, and I oppose the conditional use permit for the Airbnb at 611 West Iowa Street. We are located near the property and have lived there for 44 years. We bought our house built in 1939 from the estate of Dr. and Mrs. Milam, and we have poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into our property. In the last few years, on the east and west side of us, 2 new families, both with young children, who work at the universities, have also moved in. We were the youngsters when we first came to West Iowa Street. We're now part of the old generation. Our 2 new neighbors on east and west, young families, professors, they spent a lot of money into their house. They did not ask for an Airbnb to be installed in their house. In the last few months, 2 brand new people at 707 and 709, directly across from us, moved in. Immediately, construction trucks were there working like crazy. One's a new assistant professor in geology. They both have babies that are less than a year old. They did not ask for an Airbnb. The first thing when they showed up, they didn't ask for a conditional use permit. When within 1 block area from Orchard Street to Busey Avenue, West Urbana, West Iowa Street contains a high diversity of residents. We have a densely populated street with many young children, students, parents, and like me, the elderly. We do not want to endanger people by increased vehicle traffic imposed by an Airbnb. By our care, we as neighbors and property owners maintain our R2 single-family residential district. Our neighborhood was designated by the American Planning Association in their award as a great neighborhood for the quality of life, distinctive architecture, sustainability, and devotion to maintaining high standards. We don't need people coming in who are going to somehow enhance Urbana. We are the only American Planning Association Great Neighborhood Award winner south of I-80, okay? Our State Street tree guide within West Urbana symbolizes the achievement that Urbana was designated as Illinois' first Tree City USA. Okay, we're talking about West Urbana, the state streets. We care about our neighborhood, not just for the present, but for the future. The Department of Community Development Services does not have a plan to identify and enforce zoning laws, including involved with Airbnbs. All requests for such conditional use permits should be tabled until the Urbana City Council provides direction on the unlawful siting of Airbnbs in R1 and R2 zoning districts. If you a citizen looked up Airbnbs in West Urbana, she found 50. These are mostly all illegal. Our planning department finds 4. We can go to Airbnb and can find scores of them. This tells me our city is not doing its job to maintain the zoning laws that we require in this area. So before you add more, let's identify and enforce the Airbnbs that we have. The application for a conditional use permit submitted by the Butlers is disingenuous and at best deceptive. The Butlers application reads like an advertisement for a short-term high-volume rental property. I quote, "Luxury short-term rental property created by individuals like ourselves offer curated experiences that hotels cannot provide." I quote, "We create high-end, well-equipped luxury stays I quote, "Since student rentals are permitted in the city of Urbana, there is absolutely no reason why short-term rentals should not be." Notice the double negative. "The owners intend to rent the first floor." This is a one-story house. It's not a two-story house. It's a one-story house. "And they are going as an Airbnb for both weekday and weekend use. As listed on the form," okay? The owners are Doug and Amy Butler. The owners are Doug and Amy Butler, not Aaron and Madison Butler. Doug and Amy Butler list their current address as 324 Park Place, Lincoln, Illinois. Amy Butler, the owner, is a real estate broker in Lincoln, Illinois. To comply with a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 611 West Iowa Street, the owners must reside at the property according to your Urbana zoning ordinance. For a ZBA to consider this request for a conditional use permit, Amy and Doug Butler must move from Lincoln, Illinois to 611 West Iowa Street. The owners. 611 West Iowa Street is a single-story house with 1,152 square feet. 1,152 square feet living space. As the owners, will Doug and Amy Butler live in the basement? The realtor listed this property as having 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. As an Airbnb, 611 West Iowa Street could host large groups. The commercialization of 611 West Iowa Street as short-term rental units is incompatible within an R2 single-family residential district. We request that you reject the conditional use permit for 611 West Iowa Street, and also based that the form is filled incorrectly.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Please come forward.
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Evan Malhado. I live at 612 West Ohio Street. My wife just addressed you. Our backyard abuts the backyard of the property in question here today. I think the previous speaker made a number of excellent points. I would like to emphasize that the people who are apparently the applicants for this variance are running a business. What they want to do is bring a continuous flow of transients into what is essentially a neighborhood of single-family dwellings. They want to increase the traffic. They want to create a business environment in a residential neighborhood. Moreover, the proposition that they would be content to live most of the year in a tiny basement apartment, if that is the word, with a kitchenette, particularly when one of them professes to have an illness that needs to be accommodated to permit her to eat the kinds of foods that she needs to eat, seems to me inherently implausible. I agree with the characterizations that the applicants, if they are in fact the applicants, have been disingenuous. I agree with the observation that if there are numerous such officially unknown Airbnb operations in Urbana, that the city is not doing its job to regulate these things, and that this variance should not be approved until the city establishes a proper policy for the control of these businesses. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in opposition? Hearing none, do the applicants wish to respond to any of the points come forward?
I would just like to inform everyone that Aaron is on the deed to the house, which makes him an owner. We have every intention of living in this home. I wish it were finished right now so we could show photos and show everyone of how exactly this is going to work. I understand why it would sound complicated to someone who has not been at the property. The previous living situation was a grandmother living independently upstairs and a grandson living independently downstairs. It is not that hard to imagine. Yes, we do own other properties, but that we don't live at them. We're not living at them right now. We would like to move into this house as soon as we can. We're working on a few things with the city, with the basement, getting that coated. It has its own entrance, and since people want to talk about my celiac disease, I am able to eat and prepare foods with a refrigerator and a kitchenette available to myself, but I appreciate the concern. So we very much will be living here. Like I said, Aaron is on the deed to the house, making him an owner of the home. And we see this as a great opportunity to share our creation with both residents and visitors to the city. I realized that earlier I did not address the parking question that came up before. So you can see we do have a garage, that's a 2-car garage. We do have a parallel parking spot. And then due to the tree that we removed, that was a headache for neighbors and the power company and everything like that. We also see potential to apply for a permit to make that an additional parking space, making that 4 total parking spaces in that area. And our immediate neighbor, Russ, is not concerned about the situation at all. We know that West Urbana is very much a walkable neighborhood, so in terms of traffic, we expect for the most part that people would arrive to the home and do the rest of their traveling on foot. Of course, there are, unique circumstances, but I would just like to say that these are all things that we have thought through.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
When do you anticipate things being ready for bed and breakfast occupants?
Yeah, we are hoping for the spring. Like I said, we're working with the city right now, getting everything up to speed with code. It's a very old home that was very run down. So depending on how those processes go, we are hoping to, be able to operate our bed and breakfast in the spring.
Thank you. Oh, all right. Thank you. Is there any additional comments from staff? Well, especially regarding this whole situation about the city looking into this whole bed and breakfast. Is that anything that's on the horizon?
Well, good question. We have, I think at my last count, probably 6 different planning projects that we have in the hopper, this being one of them. And I plan to go to the City Council Committee of the Whole on November 7th to get some guidance to help us prioritize those projects. We don't have unlimited staff nor staff time, so we need to prioritize.
I guess, so then currently, I guess, of the 50 or however many Airbnbs there are in Urbana, the current process is, if they wish, then they would just apply for a conditional bed and breakfast, conditional use.
Yeah, that's the current process, and if anybody contacts us and asks us, we give them the same information that we gave the applicants tonight, which is in certain zones, it needs to be an owner-occupied bed and breakfast. We've been operating, treating these short-term rentals as bed and breakfast since at least 2014 when I came on board here. To be honest, they haven't really been a problem. There have been a couple that have come to the zoning board. I'm sure some of you remember. Some of those got denied for, I think, good cause, and other ones have been approved. I think the fact that there are, that you can go and find 40 or 50 out there and we're not hearing complaints about them, I'm not sure that it's, a huge issue right now. Although, like I said, we're entertaining looking into it more. So it's not going to go away anytime soon or ever.
Yes, Charles, go ahead.
And then the application and being on the deed, you've looked at that?
Yes, Aaron Butler is on the deed. He is also a taxpayer on the property, making him an owner.
Any additional questions for staff from any member of the board? All right, I believe we are finished with the testimony regarding this hearing. Are we ready to call this for motion? Anyone?
I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals approve the proposed conditional use in case ZBA 2022-C-02 with the following conditions: that the owner must be present while the property is being rented, that the conditional use permit shall expire upon transfer of the property or after 6 verifiable nuisance complaints within a 12-month period related to the rental of the unit, and third, that the property will be subject to regular city inspection.
Second.
Is there a second to that motion? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? And I believe then we are ready for a vote.
Ms. Chester? Mr. Cho? Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Warmbrun?
Yes.
And Mr. Welch?
Yes, that motion carries. And the request or the petition is approved. Thank you for all coming and participating. Is there any old business?
No.
Is there any new business?
No.
Is there any audience participation? Hearing none.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hearing none, is there a staff report?
Yeah, the garage variance out on Airport Road, after it came to you all for a couple sessions, that was just approved Monday? 2 days ago.
Let's not
Time
speak
flies.
too soon, Kevin. It's
Oh,
on the consent
sorry.
agenda for Monday's city council meeting. I'll also mention the Crispin Auto sign variance was approved on the 10th of October.
Is there a study session?
There's none.
Oh, go ahead.
If I can interject at this point.
Yes.
I see we're getting privacy evidently. I don't see that these emails are any good to me, if I don't know where the property is. Now, if you don't want to give us the addresses, I think you should come up with a star system or something, to where if they're within the 250-foot notice or something, you put a star on there. If they're from a mile away, you just leave it blank, or
Yeah.
come up with some way that we know that these people actually live in that particular neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay, we
Um,
can, I like the star system.
And then, could you explain the new email system to me?
I mean, as far as I know, you need to get set up with the new email. Why is this
Okay,
gonna-
well, I did that, but then how do
Okay.
I know that I got an email?
I think you have to log into it
Log into what, though?
to,
The
I-
city of Urbana, urbanaillinois.us, or whatever that is?
I don't know, Charles, I'm gonna have to look
Okay.
into this.
Could you please find that out?
I
Because if
can.
you send me an email, I'm not ever
Yeah.
gonna see it.
I know. Okay. I will get an answer.
If we have no other business, then I would move that we be adjourned.